Okay, so this is the system at the moment. You can see I've labeled the different axes. There's X, there's Y, and Z. We've got micro switches. The E is the emergency stop, and there's a switch for homing the X, the Z, and the Y. Might be a good idea to just kind of look at the files we've modified. This is the INI file. There are 3 sections that we've modified, one for each joint. So if I kind of scroll up, we're in the section for joint 1, but there's joint 0, 1, and 2. And we've made exactly the same changes to each one of them. Basically, home search velocity was 0. We've set it to 2. And home latch velocity was also 0. We've set it to 0.2. And we've done that for each of the 3 joints. This is the HAL file. We've added 3 lines at the bottom which connect the joint home switch in with the board's GPIO pins. So joint 2 would be your Z-axis. So the home switch input comes from the GPIO pin 3. And the Y-axis is 1, is connected to pin 2, and the X-axis switch is connected to pin 1. And in the previous phase, we'd added this little bit of code for the emergency stop. A tool that has been really useful is, if I go to Machine, Show How Configuration, and maybe a little bit hard to see in the video, you can go through and look at all the different pins and parameters and signals and functions that are available in this particular HAL setup. So if I look at pins and I look at joint, I've got 3 different joints, 0, 1, and 2. If I open up one of the joints, there should be home, switch in, and it's possible to go over here to watch, and when you select something, you now put a watch on it, so that when it changes state, you can see it, and that's useful for finding which pins are triggered by what, which signals are triggered by what, and that kind of thing. So those are for the switches. If you go to pins, HM2 7996, 0, and then there's GPIO. Those are your input-output pins. If I can get the mouse to work. And so if I put a watch on that, I can see what happens to that GPIO pin when I press it. So we're connected. So pin 0 is my emergency stop. So I'll just start pressing this emergency stop. And you can see that's changing color. And so it's nice to be able to wire something up to something on the board, launch this tool, and explore and figure out what exactly in the software is connected to that physical wire. And it takes some hunting, but that's essential to figuring out what you need to do in this HAL file to connect what to what in the software. So essentially what we've got, if I start my machine up, so the first thing you have to do is home your axes. So machine is start, I select axis. As soon as I hit a home axis, and I got to do this kind of quick, I now see that the x-axis is spinning, and then I press the button. It's going to back off, and then when I release the back button, it's going to slowly move forward. I press it again, and it stops. Okay, so it moves quickly towards the switch. When it hits the switch, it backs off until the switch is released, and then it slowly approaches the switch again. And the search velocity is the speed at which it approaches the switch originally. And then the latch velocity is the speed at which it finally slowly approaches the switch for a more precise indication of exactly where the switch is. And so we can home each one of the switches, or each one of the axes. We have to home all of the axes. Define 0 on our machine. Okay, so all the axes are homed. If I open my custom G-code test file stuff, let's see, let's try that again. There, junk G-code. All right, and then we run this. Now that we've homed our axis, we can run it. And this is just going to move back and forth kind of infinitely. And when we hit our emergency stop, it stops the machine. And we can start it again, but we have to toggle the power. Cool. That's it. That's where we're at.